All right, I'm going to just go ahead and get started. It's 3 minutes after noon, so we've got quite a few people with us. Thank you for everybody for joining for this little training today. At first, I want to thank the people that have been doing this ahead of me. We've had an amazing group of presenters that have been jumping on and doing these webinars for us for, oh my gosh, quite some time. And I'm pretty sure I'm not as qualified as they are to be doing this, so I appreciate people allowing me to jump in and just throw something different in there. Many thanks go out to the trainers, the special people that have been coming on and doing these webinars for us, because they're not just doing it for the USPCA, they're doing it for all of canine, and that's impressive. We want this to be available for anybody, not just USPCA people, because we're all a family. We all have the same problems. We all fight through the same training issues. And the more we can help out with that, the better we are. So I appreciate being able to open the door to maybe get some other USPCA or other trainers to come on board with us, do a quick training seminar like this or quick webinar like this, provide us with just some ideas. Whether it's scenario ideas, whether it's training, whatever. We'd love to see more people jump on board. So if you're interested in doing that, or I may just start pestering people, I'm opening the door. I'm throwing myself under the bus to try to do this today. And hopefully this will open the door to some future training as well. Those of you that don't know me, my name is Melinda Roop. I'm the USPCA National Secretary. I've been involved in the USPCA since 1998. I've been a canine since that time, and working 3 different dogs through the course of the years. Currently working a single purpose Labrador, who unfortunately, much to her dismay, is going to be the star of some of these videos today. And I'm just a real lucky person to be able to have some knowledge that I've gained through the association and through all the training that I've received. And I don't think it's necessary to keep it. I love to share it, throw it out there, give everyone an opportunity to maybe get some ideas from me, because I'm sure soaking up ideas from everybody else. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about distractions and managing distraction and detection work. Anybody that's been working a dog for a while, even if you're brand new, whether you've been out there for years, you struggle sometimes, depending on the dog, depending on the skill level of the dog, the age of the dog, how long the dog has been doing what he's been doing, with wondering or concerning yourself with, is my dog really interested in something that he shouldn't be? Or is that true loyalty to odor? Which is it? And determining which it is. And so I wanted to spend a little time working through just giving you an idea of something you can do during a training session. And I want to make sure I point out something. This is not the way, it's a way. There's a thousand ways probably to do this. Every trainer knows a way to do this. So this is just another one you can throw in your toolbox, pull it out someday, utilize it, play with it. The beauty of this exercise is that you can adjust it in a million ways to fit the dog in front of you. And you're going to hear me say that quite a bit through this next 45 minutes or so of you're going to be training the dog in front of you as you do these exercises. So I want to start out by defining, just for the purposes of this training, what a distraction is. I think we all know. But anything, a distraction can be anything that pulls your dog off task. It can be something as minor as just suddenly the dog glances off to the side, or it can, unfortunately, some of us have maybe had situations in the past on the street where it completely pulled your dog off task. We see that sometimes with tracking. The dog is just completely distracted. He's so busy being feral or doing whatever that he just simply kind of gives up and doesn't continue to work through the exercise or the track. So anything in between. You can have a minor distraction all the way up to a major distraction. Distractions can be anything you hold in your hand, like a piece of hot dog or dog food, plastic bags, whatever you think of there. But it can also be something bigger than that. It can be something environmentally Distractions can be a ceiling fan. Distractions can be a loud noise or even total darkness. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. If you've never done a search in total darkness with a patrol dog or a detection dog, it's an example of something that you can do that will add drama to the training level of your dog. Why do we need to do this? In my opinion, why do we need to do distraction training? Well, three things popped into my head. The first one being, I'm no expert in the legal area, certainly no expert in keeping records, although I've done it for 30 years now. But I love the idea of having stuff in my records that shows, hey, I've been there, I've done that. If I can show in my records that my dog doesn't give a hoot about McDonald's hamburgers, boom, I've got that in my records. The reason I bring that up is it happened with my first dog. I had a hit on a car, we towed it, got a search warrant, found dope in it. There was a substantial quantity of cash with it, of course, so they're going to fight that. Well, the first thing they were trying to say was the dog hit on all the McDonald's hamburgers that were in the back seat of the car. There was like dozens and dozens of bags of half-eaten McDonald's food. But I was able to show through training records that many, many times I had ran my dog by things like that and he hadn't given a hoot about it. So it was really nice to have that in my training records. What else does this provide for you? Why would you do this? Well, I love the idea of videotaping myself, not for me, but to show my dog. I want to see the differences in my dog when he's just simply nervous about something that he smells, interested. I want to see that, and I want to compare that to what my dog does when he's actually in the trained odor. I want to see those differences. Sometimes they're very, very small. Sometimes you can't even hardly tell. They're just so quick. But if you have those things on video, you can become kind of an expert on the things that your dog does. My current dog, has very specific behavior that she exhibits when she's on the trained odor versus when she's just smelling something that she'd love to get her mouth on. By videotaping these exercises, I've been able to see those differences. And it gives me a lot of confidence. It gives me a lot of confidence in what my dog is doing when she's doing it. And the other thing I wanted to talk about, the sympathetic nervous system. I'm people, well, what the heck is that? Well, that's the fight or flight. That's basically fight or flight. Now, the reason I want to bring this up is because in the military, in law enforcement, we do a lot of training where we really throw the book at ourselves. In other words, on the military, they're probably experts at it. They put, especially the special forces guys and things like that, they're putting them through amazing training where there's bombs going off, live rounds going off, tanks flying by them. They want to get that ability within the person, if I could talk, to basically ignore the environment that's going on around them by slowly making them used to it, by bringing down the flight that we get and making it more fight. And we do the same in law enforcement by doing scenarios. More importantly, we do the same thing with our patrol dogs by putting them through, by throwing the book at them. We try to throw these scenarios at them. Basically, we want to get them used to it. Even if it's something we think would never happen on the street, the more you bring that ability down to being calm during this stuff, the better the outcome is going to be. It's true with detection work too. So the more I throw at my dog, the more things I stress her with, whether it's environmental, whether it's odors, whether it's my behavior, whatever. The more I get her used to that, the less and less it affects her. And that mountain I have to overcome gets less and less to where she doesn't even give a hoot about anything anymore. She just does her thing. So those are just 3 reasons why I like to do this kind of training. And just really gives you an idea of the reasoning behind why we're doing this. When is a good time to do distraction training? There's a lot of factors involved in this exercise, and obviously the age and maturity of the dog, how long has the dog been out of training, all those factors, excuse me, are going to play a role into when. But quite frankly, if your dog's working the street, the time is now. I do this exercise 2, 3, sometimes 4 times a year. I love to set it up using some of the parameters that I'm going to give you. You can make it really, really hard. You can make it really, really easy. And it depends on where your dog is in the chain of things. If he's a newer dog, you're going to want to walk into this slower. Successive approximation. You're going to want to walk into it slower. Do it carefully. Whereas a dog that's been there, done that, you can probably throw almost the book at them and see where they go from there. Where do we do this kind of training? I love this question because, quite frankly, distraction training, where you do it is some of the factor of how hard the distraction training is going to be. So if I have some really, really strong odors, like something for my dog would be hot dogs, hamburger, her dog food, dog treats. Those are probably the most powerful odors for her. The first time I ran her by those, I did them in my shop, my training shop, where I knew that she was comfortable environmentally. And then once she got good at that, then I'm throwing the book at her, and I'm doing it in an environment where she's not familiar. Maybe she's got other things that is going on that she's thinking of. For instance, a dog kennel. I love to do distraction training in a dog kennel because there's the distraction right there if you don't want to put anything out. Distractions of those nature are going to add drama to the skill of the dog. They're going to add ability to that dog. Smooth is slow and slow is fast. I know that's a military saying that you hear a lot. And I like to keep that in mind when I'm doing distraction training with dogs that I'm not familiar with. Again, you're going to train the dog in front of you, but if I'm not familiar with a dog, I'm going to want to kind of go into this very smoothly and take my time, work into it. Do I want the dog to fail? Yeah, quite frankly, I do, because the place to fail is training rather than once you get out on the street. So sometimes I do set up exercises, whether it's patrol or distraction. Sometimes I do set up scenarios that are probably, they're not going to win necessarily. And there's a lot that can be learned when you lose or don't succeed, so to speak. You still win in some way because you learn. So just changing the context, just changing the location, things like that can affect this exercise. And then we get to the how do you do this? I got some videos that I'm going to show, but before we even get into it too far, I want to talk about making a list. This is the first thing I do is I sit down and I have a standard list of distractions. I'll show you one here in a second that I use. I add to it, I change it, I modify it, but that's the list that I basically use 2, 3, 4 times a year whenever I decide I'm going to do distraction training with my current dog. You can see some of the things that I threw on there for my dog. You can see the standard stuff that maybe is stupid to have on there. I don't know. I know we always think of coffee and motor oil and all those things that we used to think of. Oh my God, that's where they hide the big hides, you know, things like that. But I've also got some weird stuff on there. You see strobe lights. You see loud music. You see, those are environmental factors. I kind of laugh at myself because what's the first thing you want to do when you walk in to do a training or even a real search is you want to shut off all the ceiling fans and stuff, right? And I'm thinking, yeah, that's probably a great idea. But when I'm training, every once in a while, I'll turn them bad boys on high and test my dog. How does it affect her? Because I want to see how it affects her. I want to see that and record that while I'm in a controlled environment when I know where the odor is going to go, see where the odor is going to go and record that. You can see some of the things on there that maybe are just for my dog, but you're going to add to this list. You're going to create your own list. Patrol dogs, you're probably going to have bite sleeves, bite tugs, pillows, the bite pillows, all those kind of things are going to be on this list, maybe for patrol dogs, not so much maybe for a straight detection dog. This is just my list that I used, looks like back in August of or July of 22. I threw it together a training day, and you can see some of the things that I threw out. The cool thing about these lists is, once again, you can change these lists and make these harder individually. In other words, I have a hot dog here. I put one hot dog in a hitch receptor. And I could make that easier by making it a piece of hot dog versus a full hot dog. Or I could make it harder by putting 2, 4, 6, 8 hot dogs somewhere. So it's just like never ending. You can change this so much and make so many cool adjustments on the fly with how much odor you need to do. And you can change this every time you do a training session. You can make it better and better and better, harder and harder and harder. And those you can see pictured here some of the things that my dog, got to point out the powdered sugar donuts. That's courtesy of my husband. She loves powdered sugar donuts, unfortunately. So then I want you to define your TFR. Now, why would we want to do this? Why would we want to write out and define what our TFR is, the trained final response? And everybody calls that a little something different. It's fine if you call it something different. If you just call it an alert, I call it a TFR. Well, I want that defined in my training records, because the beauty of that is that I have learned by watching her, recording her. I now know the specific little things, not just the, oh yeah, her head's, there's a head snapped, she squares off and mouth closes and she sits. That might be an answer that you give a defense attorney when they ask you to define that. But I like to get down to the nitty gritty of really what my dog does, because that's giving me the answers that I need to know if I'm ever not confident. And you can see with my dog, my current dog, I've tried to lay this out and make it be a little bit more detailed. So not only do I have the head snap, the breathing change, I defined the breathing change. I've got the mouth position defined. Movement toward odor. What did I see? What kind of bracketing or a seesaw motion, whatever it took for her to find the source of the trained odor. Tail movement. Some people, there's not a lot of value into that, but some dogs might have a specific thing that they do with their tail. Body movement stops, they square off, nose remains pointed, and I can go on, and your dog's TFR is going to look different. But I would suggest, it's up to you how you do this, but I try to define my TFR frequently in my training records so that anybody can look at my training records and go, yeah, here's what that dog does according to her training record back in June. And in July, when she was on video going around a car, you can check mark almost every single one of those off as being that dog's TFR. Just an example of my dog's TFR. I put just a little bit more on that. That chocolate lab there, that's my current working dog. And her TFR, she doesn't sit or down. I've never put a sit or down on her because she just is static. She's just a froze. She freezes in place. But you can see examples of other dogs where, and you're going to have this be fitting the dog in front of you. So the definition of your TFR should be just quite a few things like this, but it's not going to be the very same things. And the more you videotape, the better that definition is going to get. Before we get any farther into how you're going to set this exercise up, I want to talk about this really quickly, just because it's so important when you're doing this exercise. There are 3 things that are needed for the dog to complete the circle. You need the stimulus, which is the odor that the dog is trained on. You need the response. What is the dog trained to do when he gets into the stimulus or smells the stimulus? And then the reward. There are 3 parts to that. I want to make sure that we talk about where's the handler in this chain, because this is very, very important with a trained dog. When you're starting with a brand new dog, stimulus is the very first thing you're doing is teaching him that's the odor that good things happen. When you smell that odor, a reward is coming. So the handler is like right there with that. Different ways of doing it, different ways of training, nobody's wrong. But typically you're trying to get very quickly the dog to understand that when he smells that specific thing, this is what's going to happen. And then you start broadening out how long it takes for the reward to come. It's kind of a rough way of doing it. But where's the handler? Obviously, in the beginning, the handler is right there, right with stimulus and response, teaching the dog. Smell that, boom, get this. Smell that, boom, get this. Then eventually, it's smell that, do what you're supposed to do. Oh, good. Now you get your reward. So you can see how the handler's responsibility slowly comes out of the picture. I say all that to make sure that I bring out a point that I think is very important, and that is that if you become part of what your dog needs to make a decision, then you're going to have a problem on the street. Let me say that again. If you become part of stimulus, if you become part of response, in other words, if your body language or things that you do, movements that you make, become part of those 2 things, then you put yourself into a position where the dog is going to start depending on you when he's not confident, when he doesn't just know it right out of the chute. Maybe he's a little confused, and you're going to see my dog show some of these behaviors. So it's very important, stimulus, response, and you are never involved until reward. Where is that important? It's really important that you do nothing while your dog is in the act of responding. Once he alerts or indicates, however you call it, in other words, if I have a sit dog, the dog stops, he investigates it. Yep, I think that's it. If you start to pull your toy out at that point before he's actually sat, you just gave your dog a message and you just taught him something. So it's very important that you as a handler don't do anything different when your dog is in the act. You want to wait until he's fully committed to an alert or an indication. You want to wait until that dog has told you, yes, there's drugs. That's when you're going to reward. Now I do a clicker with my current dog. Made it very easy for me to keep myself out of trouble so that I'm not like hearing the Velcro of my pants while I pull out the toy, or I'm not moving my body around in a weird way. I see people do this all the time, and I'm not being critical of that. It's what you're trained. But you'll see the dog stop to investigate, and then all of a sudden the handler does like Cirque du Soleil. They're like doing stuff around and over and running, and I'm good with that as long as the dog has committed and said, it's here. But if that dog hasn't made the commitment, if he hasn't gone into full alert or indication, you now become part of it. So down the road, if your dog is not confident in the odor, you know how many varieties there are of odors out there, whether it's fentanyl mixed with meth, something different maybe that your dog has not encountered yet. Your dog comes along and he smells it and he's like, yeah, I kind of think that's it. Wait a minute. Yeah, my handler's behind me, so I must be right. Boom, and it works out. Now, what if it's just something that's very interesting and the dog thinks, God, I'd love to get that. I'd love to get to that piece of steak. I want to eat that piece of steak. Man, it smells great. So the handler stops. He thinks he's investigating true odor. What do? You move to the back behind the dog. Dog hasn't done anything yet. Now you've just created a situation where the dog goes, yep, he's moving behind me. I must be right. I'm going to trick him. I'm going to sit and hopefully I'll get my reward. It just leads to bad behavior on the point of the dog. So I always want to make sure, and I wait. I make sure that my dog is fully committed to the odor before I ever become part of that dog's world by rewarding him. Before I show you a video here real quick, there's a few things that I want to make sure that you are aware of, which probably are, before you go into doing this training. Obviously, solid loyalty to odor. Get those core competencies. I know you've heard that word before, right? Core competencies. Let's get those skills solid before we start jacking with the dog. Again, I'm not afraid to let my dog fail. If she walks an odor, she just doesn't get a reward, right? I don't care. That's on her. Or it's on me for not getting her in the right place, but I'm sure not going to give it to her. But I want solid loyalty to odor. Know what you're going to do if your dog does display some interest. So if you're going along in this, you've set this problem up and you're going along and your dog stops at the hot dogs and he's investigating those hot dogs. What do? Well, don't change your behavior. Continue to act like you don't know. If the dog does any kind of display of maybe more than interest, like maybe he goes into a sit because the hot dogs are there and he wants them, I will stand there all day and wait for that dog to make the right decision to leave it. Once the dog leaves it, good. I mark the behavior and away we go. So I'm not telling the dog anything. If he wants to sit there, he can sit there all day. If he wants to scratch, you can scratch all day long. You're getting nothing for that. It's just really important that as a handler, you know exactly what you're going to do. Trust me on this. If the dog does this and starts to alert, every time he does it, it's going to get less and less because he's going to start to understand, I get nothing for that. The loyalty is to the odor, not anything else. Be purposeful about directing your dog through these exercises. In other words, I want to make sure that when I'm running one of these exercises, and you'll see some video here in a second, I am consistently inconsistent. You know, that's probably a bad thing to say when it comes to dog training, but I don't want to become anything that she's reading me. I don't want her to think that because I did something, then maybe there's something for her. Here's an example. How many times have you been running a training exercise and you're going along and your dog walks an odor? And it's like you put his nose right on it and he still went, nope, went right on. What is it that we kind of want to do? If you're like me, yeah, everybody wants their dog to succeed, right? So what do? You end up taking them back and you walk over it again and you maybe slow down and you do things. And pretty soon the dog starts to understand, hey, it doesn't matter. I don't have to work real hard. Because if I wait long enough, he or she's going to take me back anyway. And I don't want that attitude with my dog. I want my dog to think, you got one shot. If you miss it, I guess you go to the car without a treat or without your toy. So be very mindful of the things that you do. I do go back once in a while, but I also go back when there's no trained odor. So I might choose to go back randomly 3, 4, 6 times during a room search when there's no odor. And then the next time I go in, I might go back, take him back to check an area 2, 3, 4 times, and there is truly an odor there. It just, again, I'm not consistent about anything that I do. I don't want my dog to think I know. The dog has to tell me. And then just make sure that you're waiting it out. Like I said, with the dog that was on the hot dogs, make the dog make the decision, because on the street, you don't have that option. You're not part of it. You're never part of it. The dog has to make the choice. You want the dog to make the correct choice. So I'm going to show you a video here real quick. This area here, all along that wall, starting way back there by the coat rack, I think there's like 23 different distractions in this little area here. This is a video that was taken of my dog. She's fairly new to this. This was not probably maybe the second or third time, or maybe even less than that, that I had done this exercise. you're going to see very clearly some confusion, some distraction. She doesn't give me any prolonged interest in things, but you're definitely going to see the confusion. So I'm going to start this here real quick. The sound is off. She's just doing this kind of on her own. Again, I'm not changing my behavior. I'm videotaping, but I'm also presenting with my hand. Just kind of trying to not look at her. I'm just minding my business. You're going to see me put her up intentionally on this right here. If you've never trained using one of those suet feeders, here's just an example to throw some stuff out. You can put dope in this and throw it out in a ditch and have a safe search for your dog if you're ever interested in doing that kind of a search. But I have several of them that I use for distraction training. You can see inside that, I purposefully put her up on that, even though there's a lot of distractions hidden where you can't see them. I purposefully put her up on that so that you can see I'm directing her right to that pig ear. She loves those pig ears. They're disgusting, and I'm sure they're not good for her, and I don't give them to her very often, if at all. But I definitely train with them. So you can see that she comes up and she checks that out. And the second she turns to leave it, I want you to notice something right here. The second she makes the choice to leave that on her own, the second she does that, I immediately mark it, a behavior marker. And for this dog, train the dog in front of you, for this dog, the behavior marker is good. So even though you can't hear it, the sound isn't that good, so I just shut it off. The second she turned, I said good. And as I did with some of these other odors that were in this room. So when she made the right choice to not go into any prolonged I don't care if she investigates it, but as long as she made the choice that, yeah, that smells really good, but it's not my trained odor, I'm leaving it. When she makes the right choice, I mark it. Just a simple good. That's all I do. But I do want to point out one thing. See that tongue right there? You know, that sounds weird for me to point this out, but any of you that are horse people understand what licking and chewing means with a horse. It's an acceptance message. And dogs do this. If you pay attention, dogs will do this under certain circumstances as well. But I was so pleased to see that, because that suggests, again, can't climb into their mind, but it suggests to me that, yeah, that smelled really good, and I might have drooled a little too, but I'm good with it. I know I don't get anything for that. I might as well move on, and I accept that. And that's where she moved on, and I marked it. So we just continued to present spots. You can see some confusion there because she's like, man, that smelled so good. Can't I? Can't I? But I just continued to ask her to search. She's definitely confused. She's definitely on the verge of being a bit overwhelmed because she's just really not doing a extraordinary job of searching in that video. So just keep that in mind, that when you have situations like this right there, this is about to be a big learning experience. Any of the odors that you put out, when the dog makes the decision and she or he makes the right decision, good, mark it, because she made and it don't make it a big deal, just a simple good. That's all you got to do. Using your markers, I wanted to just throw this slide in here real quick. I talked about the behavior marker versus terminal marker. Some people call them reinforcers or reinforcements. I use both. I have a terminal marker, which happens to be the clicker. That is the jackpot. So when I click, that is you did good. Now come back to me and I will reward you. And I also use behavior markers. Now everybody words these a little different, or maybe some don't use them at all. I like to use behavior markers, just very subtle little words that I say here and there to reinforce something that she does well. And make sure that you're watching your body language. Make sure that you're not, again, giving things away. When you're pointing out these odors, you're going to want to point right on some of them. So you're going to want to point right at them, and you're going to want to point at some blank areas. You're going to want to point at the odor once in a while and maybe not point at the odor. Again, consistently inconsistent with some of those things. And don't become part of stimulus and response. Make sure that you're only the reward. Make the dog make the decision. This is another video, same dog, sorry to be boring, same dog, same chocolate lab. She's really new here. I'm just kind of starting her using some pretty simple odors. You're going to see some confusion in this, and you're going to see what some people might call a false alert or a non-productive response. You're going to see this in this dog. Now, I use markers, bridges, reinforcers, but you're going to see some interesting behavior here and how I overcome it with her. So put her into a start here. You're going to see she's already a little bit confused because there's a lot of smells in here. There's tons of dog food, tons of odors tucked away in little places. There's a lot of odor right there. She chose the right thing. I marked it. As soon as she leaves it, good. She continues to search. I'm trying to not look at her, not fall, because that's my world. And she's overwhelmed. You can tell there's a lot of odor here, and it's like, oh boy, what do I do? Now, here is what I want you to notice. She goes into what might appear to be an alert. Now, because I videotaped her so much, even if I didn't know, I would have been very clearly aware of the fact that this was just simple confusion, simple interest. And I'll point out a couple things just because it's this dog, but see that head movement? Her eyes actually kind of look at me. Her head kind of makes a slight movement like that. That's very clear to me. That's just, God, there's something in here that I'd really like to have, and maybe I could trick you into rewarding me. And then she finds out I'm not going to. That's clearly just confusion. As soon as she leaves it, yes, good. She does it again because she's still very overwhelmed. She's still very confused by this. She never sits. But there she goes into a sit. It's clear confusion. So I let her work through that a little bit. You can tell how distracted she is by the whole world here. She's really kind of taken back. And then she gets to the true odor. And that's where I get a much stronger, although it's still kind of a bad alert, it's definitely better than what I saw before in that sawhorse. You're going to see her. She's still gotten that little bit of tail wag that I'd like to get rid of, a little bit of head movement, and then she is pulled off of it. I give her a very kind of a weak reward on that, only because she obviously found the odor. I'm good with that. But I want to be very, very careful what I'm rewarding. If I'm not happy with that alert, then I'm going to reset that, which is what I did. I reset her. Didn't really reward her much. It was more of a verbal. And I asked her again to go find the drugs in a second here. Again, I'm just making her think. And then I reset her, go find drugs. You can see how distracted she is. She's like, wait, what? Oh, okay, there's drugs over there. I go over here. And then there. That's the alert I'm looking for. So that's when I'm going to give her the jackpot. I don't want to reward her alert just because she found drugs. Doesn't mean that I need to reward her. She knows the odor. It's not about whether she knows the odor or not. It's how satisfied am I with that alert based on what she's been going through, being distracted, and so forth and so on. This is when I'll reward her with kind of a jackpot. This is another quick video. It's only a few seconds long. This is, again, this wasn't that long ago, and I actually set this one up. This was a very simple, quick one that I did right before a really hard one. I had discovered something with this dog, and right before I set this one up, this is just this small corner of the shop. There was a ton of odors in here. She really did cover most of this before I got the video running here. But One of the things that I had noticed, and I have to be careful about this, is again, they're master readers of your body language. She had discovered that if I'm facing a certain direction, that must be where the odor is. So I had to start learning to camp my body, look the other direction, keep myself facing the other direction, sit myself down in a chair and face away from the hide, all sorts of things like that, because I was becoming part of her picture. So you can see in here, this is just a short one, but she goes into a much, much better response. That's what I'm looking for right there. Even though she was distracted, none of the distractions mattered anymore because we've worked through them now. And that's the alert I got. I left her on that odor for a little, or on that alert for just a little while. So as you set these exercises up, just continue to add distraction, continue to add difficulty. Again, you can make it tougher. You can make it easier using environments, easier or harder. You can make it easier or harder using the different odors. You can make it really tough. Go to a dog park, go to a grooming facility. We do drug training all the time in a grooming facility. With the dogs right there, we put a row of bricks or whatever we have to hide dope in right down the center of the walkway with barking dogs on both sides. And we work odors right there, simple odors. But you can utilize the factors of this exercise by making it easier. You can make it harder in many ways. So it's kind of fun because you can change this up and really provide some pretty decent training that you can videotape to give you a lot of knowledge about your dog, a lot of confidence. And the final video that I want to show you real quick, just about done. This video that I showed you, that was a real simple, easy, quick. She had no problem, very strong. I went directly from that one to this one. This dog, I live on a farm, we have cattle. I literally chased the cattle out of this building to set up this exercise, but she, how do I say this? Hopefully nobody's eating lunch, but unfortunately she's a poop eater. I don't know how else to say it. She likes to run around the cow lot, and if I'm not watching her every second, she'll make a meal available to herself. It's disgusting, but that led me to this training exercise because I thought, well, geez, that's like the biggest distraction scenario I can get for this dog. So Dramamine alert, because when I video this, I suck at videotaping, so I apologize. So there's a lot of spinning around, but you're really going to see a dog that's overwhelmed. How many times have you gone into a search warrant? And this was me with my first dog because I had a lot to learn. I thought that I should be able to walk into a search warrant, flip the switch on, go find drugs. And the dog should just go dutifully find drugs. In a perfect world, and maybe an experienced dog, yes. My first dog, I was the dummy at the end of the leash, but I went into a search warrant. It was loaded, one of those, loaded with everything you can imagine in that place. Cat urine, dog urine, feces, pizza, diapers, the worst of the worst that you've all been there. And I walked in and cut that dog loose, go find drugs. And that dog did not even give a hoot about drugs. All he did was walk around and mark his territory. And the more he did it, the madder I got. The madder I got, the less he was likely to search for drugs. So if I'd have known this exercise back then, I would have understood that dogs they're still dogs. Our canines, as well trained as they are still dogs. And so I learned with that dog that I just needed to walk in and let him be a dog. And within just a few minutes, he would kick over and really start searching for drugs. And you're going to see an example of that with this dog here. I hope it's not too jerky or showing too bad, but this is obvious that really all she wants to do is stop and investigate the pies. And you know what I mean by that. And I'm not saying anything to her. I'm just simply letting her work this out. I haven't told her to go find drugs. I might have said it maybe once. I don't know. I can't remember. But otherwise, I'm just kind of waiting to see if she ever kicks into gear. And she kind of does there. You kind of see a little bit of something that looks like maybe she's searching for drugs, I don't know if she is or not. I honestly, I'm pretty sure she's not. She's just looking for a little snack. But if I was inexperienced, maybe, and I'm going to stop it there for a second, I would think maybe she was actually looking for drugs when in fact she's not. So think about that the next time you go to do a search in a one of those environments. Maybe let your dog be a dog for a little bit, even just a few seconds or a moment. Let the dog kind of get that out of their system and then kick them into gear if they don't automatically do it. Now you can see over here, she finally does. She finally gets into source, and then boom, there it is. And then I get the alert. And I was really pretty happy with that alert because of how distracted she was. And then I did a dumb thing, because then I decided, a little cocky, I guess. I thought, oh, that was great. And then I called her name, and then she looked at me. But then I thought, okay, she's still holding. I'm just going to wait it out, let her get back into a good position. And then I started trying to call her. Those are bridges, by the way. I'm doing things to try to make her want to push into it more like she did there. And then I just waited a second too long, because I really should have rewarded her when she had pushed into it that second time. Timing is so important. And I missed my opportunity. So I didn't give her a huge reward on this, because even though she did work through a problem, and it was a difficult problem for her, even though she worked through that, again, I got to be careful what I'm rewarding. And if I'm not perfectly happy, I already know she knows the odor. I'm not training her on the odor anymore. I'm training her to avoid distraction and to really nail that alert. So I wanted to be really careful. When she was back here and she punched into it right there, that's when I should have clicked, because that's what I want to reinforce. If I had a leash, I would be pulling her a little bit, creating a bridge, just really making her push into it, making her really commit to that alert, and then click on that. So just to run through that real quick, and then I'm pretty much done, but create a list. Make your list of distractions. You can write them down however you want. Make sure that when you run this exercise that you watch your body language. Be very, very, very cognizant of what you're doing. Don't do anything differently while your dog is in the act. Make sure your dog is committed to that alert before you change your behavior. Video, video, video. Make video records of the things that your dog does, so you can see the little nuances, the things that she or he does differently when he's on odor versus when he's not on odor. Making sure that you kind of know the difference between interest and just trained odor. Repeat it a couple times a year, maybe 2, 3, 4 times a year. Increase the difficulty, add difficulty to the exercise by putting out more odor, less odor, larger quantities, harder odors. Patrol dogs, man putting out a bite suit so that it's in the corner while you're doing your search, or even hiding a bite sleeve. Those are tough searches, really tough searches. And I love to do this exercise. You can do it in a row of lockers very easily. So if you have access to a school or someplace that has a nice long row of 30, 40, 50 lockers, it's really easy to do this distraction exercise. I put a different odor in every locker. So I start out with just 3, 4 lockers with plastic bags, 3 or 4 lockers with gloves, 3 or 4 lockers with dog food, and I progressively get harder down the line. And I even collect urine and wipe urine, as gross as that is. And yes, I clean it up with bleach. After I'm done, I wipe that on the lockers so that the dog is going along, and all of a sudden, oh wow, there's dog odor. And I put an odor out, a trained odor out in amongst there, usually right at a junction. So like right between dog food and dog urine, because that's when you're going to get the best display of, man, I know there's odor there, but this dog urine, I got to check this out. And then you'll see the processing that the dog goes through. It can take up to 7 minutes. I've timed dozens and dozens and dozens of dogs. And it takes them a while to switch from the dog urine to, okay, there's odor here. It's a very interesting exercise to set up. If you ever want more details on that, just let me know. That's what I wanted to cover today. I don't know if there's anybody that has any questions. We've got just a few minutes here that I can answer some questions if anybody has any questions. Looks like, do you think the value is in any distraction that is valuable to the dog or distractions that are likely? I think both, Kathy. And you can only be limited by your own creativity here. I love to read through the career cases because the detection cases that are in the career, sometimes they'll have, yeah, the odor was hidden in this. And I pull out my distraction list and that goes on my distraction list. So even though you're unlikely to run into those things on the street, we're trying to accomplish, remember that scale I was talking about, fear, fight, or flight? Why do we practice this and make it big, dramatic? Why does the military shoot live rounds over your head? Why do they do that? Because they want to bring, it's almost like capping, if you know what capping is. They want to bring that thought process to the dog. So I'll use a bite sleeve, even though it may never be out on the street. I'll use it because it just levels the playing field for the dog. Really teaches the dog, no matter what the smell is, as much as you want it, there's no value to it. No value. How often do you train with distractors in, say, a normal week? You can do as much as you want or as little as you want. I set up my exercises with I always have a goal. I have to have a plan, and it's progressive in nature. So for instance, if I want to work door seams, car door seams, and you know how sometimes, or even house room interior door seams, I have my plans and I write out what I'm trying to accomplish. Sometimes those plans don't include distractions. Other times I throw one in here and there. So it's specifically up to you as to how much you want to do distraction work. I definitely just plan on a straight, flat out, heavy duty, loaded room at least a couple, 2 or 3 times a year for the current dog that I work on the street. Is it best to introduce this as a known hide versus single? I say yes, because what are you trying to accomplish? We don't want to be wrong, right? We all think we're right. We all think our dog is right. And you know, when you're asked, you always say the same thing. Oh, there must have been odor. Even though we didn't find drugs, there must have been odor. I'm not arguing with that point. But I think if the purpose of training is to pull out the problems and fix the problems while you can, document those problems and correct them. So if you know where everything is, as long as you can control your body language and keep you out of the whole picture, then I definitely would do it as a known. If you want to up the ante, I've done it with my handlers before and not told them, because I think it's important for them to understand the difference between interest and true odor. So yes, you can certainly do it as a blind hide if you want, but be awful careful with that. Make sure you've really got your solid core competency. The odors are solid before you do that. How do you work on your dog being distracted with people being on that, with people being in the room, like for a certification? I'm assuming that, Evan, that's what you mean. People are, you know what, that again, that's a progressive, it's an exercise that can be set up. I'm not going to tie our time up here too much longer, but I do have some exercises. If you want to email me, I'd be more than happy to send you some progressive plans to work on the dog if you have a dog that's being distracted by people. I know that comes up in court cases once in a while with, why can't you search the car when the people are in it? And that's an interesting, that's another Oprah Winfrey show, I think, to go on for that. Do you use a larger amount of target odor when dogs are newer to distractions, but do recognize odor? But again, what are we trying to accomplish, Terry? You certainly can. You're not wrong. But I like to look at it this way. I'm not teaching the amounts. I've already long since taught my dog big amounts, small amounts, medium amounts. I've already long since trained that. I'm already confident that my dog is 100% solid on the odor before I ever throw all this other stuff out. So the target source, the amount that you have there, to me is kind of irrelevant, because that's not what I'm trying to accomplish. And if you already know that your dog can find 5 grams, then whether there's distractions or not makes really no difference. Now you can vary it and do whatever works for you. You're certainly welcome to do that. But I don't do that. I tend to stick with somewhere around 5 to 15 grams, typically when I'm doing these exercises. But sometimes I'll throw out an ounce just for the fun of it. So it just varies. Depending on what I'm trying to accomplish. But again, I already know that my training purpose is not whether he can find 5 grams or 20 grams. It's, can he work through multiple difficult distractions? I don't see any more questions, but if at any time anybody has any questions or want kind of a rundown of this, again, I would be more than happy to provide you with some information. I think pretty much everybody can find my email address on the website, and I'm certainly free for conversation on this. Again, this is a way, not the way. So I hope that this did give you an opportunity to learn something new, something that you can throw into your next training day. Have some fun with it, enjoy it. Just be very cautious of how you're handling and not becoming part of what your dog needs to alert. So that's it. I appreciate it. Thanks everybody for joining. We're going to grab somebody else to do another training scenario or another training webinar in the near future. I just am the lucky first one for the actual training stuff, but we'd love to get some people highlighted. So don't be shy. Step right up. Don, do you have any further?
Melinda, you did a terrific job. I learned some things, and I'm sure everybody else learned some things. So we do appreciate you taking the time to put this together and to share your knowledge with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you at the next webinar.